Okay, the undercoat is dry. It turned out the shade that I wanted, and this cloth here, it's just ordinary paper towel moistened with an eyedropper, 3 or 4 drops of alcohol on there, and then kind of scrub it around, let it dry out a bit, and then using significant pressure, scrub away at this base coat to get any of the superficial stuff off the top. Anytime there's red, the color red involved in a stain job, there's always going to be a little overflow like this, or not overflow, but kind of an oxide that appears on the surface. So now that that's done, we're ready to put on the black. Now the irony, or the problem with this finish is the one that goes on first is the one you want to see as the highlights. So it's kind of counterintuitive in that the one you put on next is what you want to end up in the low areas, and the one you put on first you want to have appear in the high spots. Okay, so right out of the gate, know the following. If you haven't discovered this before, I'll save you the heartache. All black leather dyes that are in liquid form will end up a weird metallic greenish color when applied to briar. To some extent, some of it's just god-awful. It's a horrible metallic looking greenish, grayish black. Nobody ever got a good black color out of those liquid dyes. Also, they spread when they're in a suspension of alcohol, so that it would just overlay this entire thing evenly, and you'd end up with a black pipe, and it would be very difficult to bring the red out. So here's one of the tricky deals. Leather dye is available commonly, routinely, in paste form. It's out there. People don't think of it as that, but that's all it is. Shoe polish. Now, I don't mean the little waxy cheap stuff in a can that you get at the drugstore. Not at all. You want the highest grade you can get. Johnston and Murphy makes a cream that is nothing but leather dye in a emulsion, it's thick. It's basically the same stuff that you buy as Fiebing's leather dye. It's just been distilled and concentrated to where it is in paste form. Think of if you had a stew on the stove, and the longer you simmered it, the thicker and thicker it gets. It's like that. So it's the same stuff we've been using on pipes for decades now. It just happens to be in an agreeable form for this next trick that we're going to do, which is take an ordinary soft bristled toothbrush, touch it into the black, and get after it. And what will happen is the thicker black goes into the crevices and allows you to wipe it off the peaks of where the red, you want the red to poke through. And we'll highlight them even later when this is completely dry on a wheel. I'll show you how to do that. It's kind of tricky. But this is all you do. In this particular case, this model of pipe, the rim and the bottom are left the base color, so don't get any black there. It's not critical. I mean, you can just wipe it off if you do, but don't deliberately apply it there. The overflow isn't going to hurt anything. And you just keep at this until you have even coverage. And wipe it off after every application. You're trying to squeegee it off the top so that it goes into the depressions, like when they patch an asphalt road, they throw on more than they want and then scrape it off or pack it in the hole, kind of a thing. And think of it like that. I didn't put enough on this card. Anyhow, this is how you make a convincing duplication of the Dunhill shell briar finish. And it seems kind of strange, but it's the only way I have ever found that works 100% and doesn't require vast technique. Again, I've seen it done with gutta percha, which is a type of like rubber cement type stuff that is applied in tedious layers, and it requires quite a bit of skill to do it, and you can get highlights with that, but I don't know why anybody would want to do the more tedious, demanding method when you get equal results or superior results from a simpler method. So this is the only way I do this anymore. I did plenty of experimentation in my early days, as you can imagine, and I was never happy with the result until I started using Johnston & Murphy's shoe cream. All right, that's enough on video here. I might do this another time and hit it from wiping it from a different angle. You want to get it to stay in those depressions, and then it'll dry or soak into the wood. You can dry this as usual in a hot air gun if you like. And the final, well, second from the end step, I'm going to bring out the highlights over at the bench using a special buffing technique, and then we will wax it, and then we are done. Okay, we're at the big buffer that has the VFD connected to it because rotational speed is a critical component in the next step. This is a hard wheel, but it's soft on the surface here. And we're going to rev it up pretty good and then hit it with a rake. You could use a knife blade, serrated knife or something like that, although you have to be very careful with those. They can snag and hurt you, but this is designed for the purpose. It's got a handle on each side. You can hold it firmly, and we want to get off all of the readily removable, I should say, otherwise it wouldn't be red anymore, but get off all of the surface level of the red rouge. That's the only compound that goes onto this wheel because it's used for really just one purpose. Anyway, we're going to clean this off, touch it, and then I'll show you how to bring out the highlights on a Dunhill shell briar. That's all the compound we need, and I'm slowing this down to where you can almost but not quite see the rotation. Now, something spinning doesn't show up, the speed of it spinning doesn't show up very clearly in video, but trust me when I tell you this is only going maybe, I don't know, 150, 200 RPM, something like that. We can go slower still. In fact, I'll start out even slower. And just a brief touch of compound. Now if you were to do this with a rapidly spinning wheel, you know where this is going to go, right? It would just blast what you had done. If there's any abrasive qualities to it, you would find yourself past the point of no return almost instantly. You have to do this at a very slow speed or do it by hand. Do not try to do this step on an ordinary buffer at its full rotational speed. You will be sorry. But we are cutting through the black wherever it has landed on top of bumps. Also on the bottom, very lightly, because we don't want to affect the nomenclature in this particular pipe. It's fairly faint. And then on the rim, because this particular model had a polished rim, even though it's a sandblasted pipe. This is not a repair. That's the way it was designed to look. It was the Duke, the Don, and a third one I can't recall, but they all had a similar design except for the stems. Okay, there's nothing left to do except hit it with some wax. And that, of course, I'm not going to show it. Everybody's seen a pipe get waxed, but you don't want to load up on wax and pack it into the irregular surface. No, not at all. You want to use a soft wheel, fairly high speed, and light wax so that it just shines it without creating a crust on there. Now if you really wanted to, you could take some powdered carnauba. Now when I say powdered, I don't mean granular, I mean dust. And heat the stummel up in a hot air stream and then sprinkle on that and melt it in and shine it and all that. I've messed with that in the past. It sounds better than it works. I've never found that it yielded any distinctive superiority, and it was certainly a lot more work. So this is all I do now, is just use a fluffy wheel and some wax. Now if this were a new model, let's say it was a brand new unsmoked pipe that had been dropped and broken, for example, and it was black and shiny and crispy looking, well then you'd use an actual clear coat type of finish on there. Shellac or something would be that, but that's a different story, or a different video for a different time. But if you were to shellac this pipe, being 65 years old, it would not appreciate it. It wouldn't look right. It would just be kind of like a the vibe would be gone, and you want a mellow glow from these old pipes. You don't want them to be shiny and glassy looking. In my opinion, that just messes them up. So that is it. And always a compare and contrast type of thing. Here we go, under bright light. I'll give this the same treatment just so they're equivalent. Remember, this pipe was made in the same period historically, and is basically the taper stem version of the same model. And other than the stem on this one being greenish, I'm guessing you're not going to see a whole lot of difference in how these look. Let's check the length on this. Remember, the Dunhill was very rigid in the overall length of their models, that they changed the shank, but they would just change the length of the stem to accommodate, so they always came out even. So I pre-marked this ruler. The black line comes to the end of the stem. And now here's the one we just made. And bingo. We scored to within about 1/2 millimeter of being identical to a contemporary piece. So I'm going to shine this up with some wax, then take some still photos of it that I'll try to add to the video. I'm not sure I can do that, but I've been told that I can. And that is it. I think I might put together a few parting comments and a more overview vein of just repair work in general. But that is the conclusion of the restoration of this particular pipe. And I hope you found it useful. And that's it for now.